Welcome back to DotLife. Boston is a union city. If you go south on Route 93, you may see a billboard to that effect. Boston has a rich history of union activity. In fact, former Mayor Marty Walsh was the labor secretary under former President Joseph Biden, and he now serves as the NHLPA president. So I could go on. There's a lot of examples of folks being involved with unions in Boston, but I'm going to let some experts talk about that union history instead of myself. I'm joined today by Darlene Lambos, who is the president of the Greater Boston Labor Council, AFL-CIO. Hi, Darlene.
How you doing? Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here. I'm also joined by Chaton Green, who is a business agent at the Greater Boston Building Trades Union. Hey, Chaton.
Absolutely. How you doing?
Thank you so much for coming. It's so apropos to have you here right around Labor Day, and we're going to talk about the parade that happened just this past weekend for the first time in Boston. But before we do that, I really want to talk about you. So, Darlene, why don't we start with you? Who are you? What's your job? And where do you live?
Well, I actually live in Roxbury. I know I'm on DotLife, but I do live not so far away from here. And I grew up in Portland, Oregon, came here about 20 years ago and had kids, bought a house. My kids go to Boston Public Schools. They go to BLA. I'm the president of the Greater Boston Labor Council, was elected about 5 years ago for the first time, and then was reelected this past year. And so we cover about 24 cities and towns, 100,000 union members and their families throughout Greater Boston.
And Chaton?
Hey, my name is Chaton Green, business agent with the Greater Boston Building Trades Unions. We represent over 35,000 working members and their families, and those members are spread out across 20 different local unions right here in our beautiful city. And, we fight for the working class. We make sure people have access to the middle class and have access to great careers and pathways. I actually am a product of a pre-apprenticeship program called Building Pathways, which kind of kicked off my career. I went to Madison Park High School in Roxbury, and, class of '05. Super happy about that. And, yeah, just a lifelong Boston resident who's just I love my city, and I'm very passionate about making it the best place ever.
I think this is a really timely conversation because we're seeing a big push toward trades. I think partially because college is so expensive right now,
sure.
But also because trades are in such high demand. Whenever I need a contractor or somebody to do some work, I have a hard time finding one. Are you seeing more demand for union membership?
Absolutely. These are great, promising careers. And they change lives and they save lives. I speak to that because my life has been changed and saved through that as well, affording me, the security to really live in my city and raise my family. I'm married with 2 kids, and I had my kids after I joined the union, and it just gave me the confidence to build a family. And that's what I want for everyone who wants to thrive within this city. These jobs are awesome. Just like you mentioned, debt-free education, really high level training for free. And there's so many different trades to choose from. So it's really like, find something you're really passionate about, and it's a promising career, and, it's a pathway to the middle class, affording people, the comfortability of buying a house, having, great wages and benefits. And, if anyone hasn't heard of an apprenticeship, you know what I mean? It's a good time to kind of ask those questions and kind of dive in.
I want to talk about your story a little bit more later on, but Darlene, before we do that, talk about what the Greater Boston Labor Council is all about. You cover more than just trades.
We do. We cover all of the other unions as well. If you can name a worker, we have a union for you. So we have Unite Here Local 26 represents the hotel workers, concession workers over at Fenway who are on strike a few weeks ago. We represent Teamsters Local 25, lots of different teachers, firefighters, you name it, plus obviously the building trades. And we're UFCW 1445 is also one of ours. They represent Stop and Shop workers. So we run the gambit, and they represent lots of different workers throughout the city of Boston, throughout Greater Boston. Boston. And one of the things that is so incredible about the unions that we represent and why I'm so proud to be here today is not just the rich history and what the labor movement has done for cities and towns like Boston and neighborhoods like Dorchester. It's for the labor movement for the entire country has been fighting for worker protections, better wages and benefits, but also to make sure that our families and our communities can grow and thrive. And that is one of the things that's really important, is that we're a labor movement. We're not just unions that care about what's happening in the workplace. We care about what's happening in our communities and in our neighborhoods.
Absolutely.
Boston, as I mentioned, has a rich history of labor, but Dorchester in particular, there are so many union halls in Dorchester. I can name a few of them: the Plasterers Union, the Carpenters Union, the Electricians Union. I mean, I could go on. There's so many. Why, I mean, aside from the fact that Dorchester's huge, why do you think Dorchester has become the place where so many unions have settled?
Well, just like Dorchester, like other working class neighborhoods where there were people that were struggling and needed a union to be able to have a voice, to be able to confront some of the exploitation that was happening in our companies and neighborhoods. And so like Dorchester, like Alston Brighton, like there are other places, other neighborhoods throughout Boston, working class neighborhoods that really have anchored unions and union halls.
Sure.
Chaton, you are Pipe Fitters Union, is that right?
Sprinkler Fitters.
Sprinkler Fitters. And where is that headquartered?
That's in West Roxbury.
Okay.
Yep. That's our union hall. And yeah.
What are some of your favorites? Come on, tell us your favorites.
My favorite trade? I definitely would have to say all of them. I got high respect for what we do, because when you look at a building, right, you know, I ride by a building, I say, you know, wow. I tell my son, you know, wow, I built that building. You know what I mean? You know, to him, he's like, wow, my dad put up that whole building. But
and you don't correct him, right?
Right? No. But you know, later down the line, you know, it takes a team. It takes a team, from the, you know, electrical systems, the fire protection systems, the heating and ventilation systems. Like, it all ties in together. Yeah.
So, you know, Dorchester obviously is home to a lot of these places. Has Dorchester had any outsized influence on anything, you know, related to the labor movement?
Well, as you said, Boston is a union city. Dorchester is one of the biggest neighborhoods. And I just think, you know, it's beautiful to you know, go from neighborhood to neighborhood and see that union representation, you know. And that just speaks to, as we said, ensuring that there's access, that people can access these things, whether you catch the bus, whether you drive your car. You're gonna, you know, we want to make sure that, you know, when you're ready, or as soon as you get the information about unions, that you walk into one of these halls and you sign up. These trades are for everyone. We encourage everyone to explore them, these promising careers.
I think so. What's so great about Dorchester, it's like an example of so many of our great neighborhoods. It's diverse. It has working class people, normal people that are just going to shop in their own, you know, local stores. And that's part of the thing that is so important about unions, is that it's not workers drive the workplaces, the economy, and the local economy in particular. And so if you have good union jobs, you can support your families, but you're supporting your local economy. So having such a strong union base here in Dorchester and other parts of the neighborhood, other parts of the city as well, really help drive and stabilize and strengthen the local economy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about what it's like to be a union member, and I want to start that with your story, Chaton. Do you mind telling the folks about how you got to be a union member?
For sure. My story is one of second chances. You know, graduated high school, got a little taste of college, but still really couldn't find my footing. You know, ended up in the court systems on probation, made it out, and I was really stuck. You know. Haven't started my family yet. I wasn't married yet. I was still figuring out, like, am I going to be able to survive and thrive within my city? Those are real hard questions that I would ask myself. And as soon as I heard the word apprenticeships, it was like, what is that? You know, started to do my research. I met, you know, former mayor, former labor secretary, and he said, NHLPA. Yeah, and he mentioned it, and he said, hey, you know, my story is one of struggle also. And if you keep putting one foot in front of the other, it will pay off. And with the apprenticeship, it was exactly that. You know, you work a full, 40 hours plus overtime a week while going to school, and local 550 sprinkler fitters, I went to school for 5 years. I didn't picture myself basically kind of getting my master's degree in fire protection, but that's exactly what it was. And it was something that I can walk around and really be proud of too, while making, like I said, the great wages, the benefits, and becoming a licensed sprinkler fitter, working my way up from, apprenticeship year 1 to year 5 to becoming a journeyman, and then giving that back, feeding it back into that awesome system of each one teach one.
So as a journeyman, you were teaching apprentices?
For sure, for
Okay.
sure. As you learn those skills, because when you step on a job site, it's a couple categories of learning. A lot of people like the hands-on stuff. Some people like, classroom stuff, maybe videos, visuals. But with the trades, you get all aspects of learning that tie into it. I made real life mistakes in the field, and those were the ones that really taught me my best lessons. And then when you go to class, you communicate and you talk with people that share their own experiences. Hey, I made that same mistake. This is how I grew from it. And I think it takes all that learning to master a trade. And even when you become a journeyman, there's a lot to learn, but I think the value is in giving it back.
So all of that apprenticeship is paid?
Yeah. So, you work your 40 hours, all that's paid. And part of your benefit structure is, all that goes back into not all of it, but a portion of that goes into the apprenticeships and so forth, just like your health care and retirement benefits, and that full package supports the apprenticeship program.
So, Darlene, talk about how that works at a larger scale. How is it just through the dues and the fees that they're able to support this kind of programming?
Well, I think it's pretty brilliant.
It
It's an
is.
amazing thing, and the building trades have really been leading the way on this. And my dream actually is to have every union knows this, every union have an apprenticeship program.
Yeah.
This kind of earn as you learn is so incredibly important to how we think about education and investment in our people. And we look at other kinds of training programs, which we call train and pray, because many of these, some nonprofits, but also some companies will set up these programs that you end up with a certificate at the end of like 90 days. And you as an individual worker are supposed to shop that around and say, look what I did. I graduated from this training program, hire me. But when you're with the building trades and you have a union, they are actually trying to support you in getting that job. Once you graduate, you're actually in a job already because you're earning as you learn. It's on-the-job training. So we've talked to lots of different unions about how the building trades has really been such a great example. It's not going to look the same. The level of investment that the trades have given and put into our workforce is phenomenal. It's like 70 million every year
Absolutely.
in just in apprenticeship programs.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of partnership with labor, with management, with employers, with government, that's the kind of thing we want to see, that level of investment of our workers and our workforce, and the level of respect in terms of making sure that people are not just coming out of education with so much debt.
Yeah.
I know.
So much debt.
Yeah.
And making those financial institutions even more profitable. And higher education is now a profitable thing when it should be really about education. So that's why there's so many unions that are really looking at the example of apprenticeship programs and how it can work in their own industry and sector.
I want to talk about the social aspect of it. I mean, you've kind of got a built-in brother or sisterhood,
Really,
right?
really.
How was that for you?
Yeah, I have the freedom to go back to the apprenticeship school right now and maybe give some of what I've learned, or, just give some encouragement to the upcoming members that are making it through their apprenticeship. I think even if you're on a job and, you're master journeyman, and, things are changing, your industry is moving kind of fast, so you may have to go get almost like a refresher on something, or you can walk right into the school you graduated from and ask those questions. There's instructors there that, it's just an industry that supports each other, no matter what stage of your career you're in, whether you're apprenticeship year one or you're just a seasoned vet, and there's no shame in that, right? Like, we all support each other, and even outside of the workplace, there's tons of there's women, Boston Union Trade Sisters who formed a awesome sisterhood of support for upcoming women that are looking to be in the trades, that need that network of support. Like, the trades are doing a lot, and they're growing and becoming more, just, it's not all about what we do on the job site all the time. We're actually worried about, how we're doing in our communities, giving back in many different ways, whether it's supporting community groups, or I often go to the Boys and Girls Club and join their, trades day, and just give education. Kids may be, a little younger, but this is something that you could look forward to, and that's something that we like to show.
If you walk into a union hall, are there people there and you can, ask questions or just kind of shoot the shit with them?
Absolutely, yeah. We have business agents, business managers, organizers, all set up. And that's the beautiful thing. It's unlike a regular job,
Office,
Yeah.
Well, there's also like the retirees too.
Oh.
So that's the lovely thing about actually a union. So you
Yeah.
have young people coming in as apprentices, not just in the construction trade, but there's other unions that have wonderful retiree clubs and programs and groups. And like Teamsters Local 25, they have a very strong futures committee, and then they have a really strong retirees that are there in the building
I
hanging
will
out
tell
in
you,
the union hall.
I walk by the Plasters Union often, and there are grills out there. So they're doing something besides teaching and learning.
For sure.
And then the teachers also have a wonderful retiree, very active in the union. Lots of different unions. The Carmen's Union have they have barbecues. And so it's not just the trades. There's a lot of folks that when you're part of the union, and what I love about the union family and the labor movement is that you are part of a family. We call each other brother, sister, sibling, because we believe that that's what we're trying to build. We're building a family that sticks up for one another, stands together, and fights against any kind of exploitation, any kind of that culture that is all about corporate greed that we want to fight against. And it gives workers a voice on the job, but also the confidence to really dig in and be active in their communities.
So given all of that, there's a lot of people out there who don't like unions or are anti-union. So what would you say are the misperceptions about unions out there? And what would you say to those people who are not pro-union?
Well, I worked non-union for many years before actually joining a union. And there's exploitation, And not only that is you feel like you're alone while you're going through, something that is really, a job is supposed to support you and uplift your family, right? But oftentimes we see people profit off of the backs of workers. And sometimes the worker may not even know. They may just accept that minimum wage and be like, I'm so thankful I just got to have this job, right? I was able to, my first job was on a project labor agreement site at UMass Boston. And it was awesome. And the project labor agreement sets the floor standard of, unions. This is the union rate, right, that we've, voted for and we collectively bargained for, as well as the benefits. And this is how many hours that need to go into your apprenticeship. And we set that floor base, and you can go higher if you want. But oftentimes when people are greedy, they go way lower than that standard that we set. And I that's not right at all. When I was working non-union, it was so hard. I was very scared that I wouldn't be able to continue to live and raise my kids in a city that I really love. So when we exploit workers, we don't just exploit the worker. That goes into the family. And,
And the economy.
In the economy, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly right. When I'm leaving the job site and I'm walking home, I'm walking by many shops that I love
Yeah.
to eat at and stuff like that. But just feeling like, I can take a vacation. I can afford a vacation. I can even pay my rent in that same month or my
Right.
mortgage in that same month and feel good, or take my daughter or son out and just feel good. And I just think that oftentimes people are greedy, and oftentimes it's off the backs of workers, and that's where unions come in to show them their worth and show them, if you don't have those skills, guess what? We'll teach you those skills.
I just think that kind of framework and narrative is actually intentional by corporations who want to continue to exploit and make profits over intentionally investing in their own workers. And I think that is something that we as the labor movement are trying to do, is shift that narrative to really dig into what our values are as a society. What are our values as human beings? We talk a lot about how AI and tech and the kind of the driverless cars and Waymo that are being tested out here in Boston and Massachusetts. And we talk about how, what is that problem that's being solved there? There really isn't, except that over 70,000 app drivers are going to be put out of work. That's 70,000 Massachusetts, greater Boston drivers who are trying to put food on the table, who are just trying to make ends meet, and they will be out of work because a driverless car is going to somehow, because it's progress, that's
Who
not
are already not full-time workers anywhere, who are already making kind of poor, non-benefited job wages, right?
Right.
So this idea of how we want to really enhance and support workers, and having AI and tech actually really build up and center workers and not take away their jobs is a really important part of what we're trying to also share in terms of the labor movement. That anti-union is not really something that comes from our value system here in society. It's actually intentionally something that companies try to separate and divide us.
So when you hear that kind of rhetoric from not corporate shills, but from regular people, it's because they've been indoctrinated? Is that what you're...
Well, I would say some people just don't know. So
Yeah.
if I were to say to you, you know what, I really believe in getting paid for what and being respected on the job. And most people would say, yeah, you really do. You do deserve that.
Yeah.
Well, some people might say, well, I am not respected on the job, so I need to gather with my coworkers to talk about how this is not just an individual problem that I'm dealing with, that it's all of us that are dealing with this. And if we band together, if we go together to our employer and explain that there are some problems, there's some issues, there's some safety issues. It's not just about wages and benefits. Let's talk about health and safety that the labor movement has really brought to the forefront in terms of all kinds of industries, not just construction. We're talking about laundry facilities, massive laundry facilities, heat exhaustion, and throughout labor history, you know that the typical ones where the textile industries, where people were locked into these factories and not able to get out because of fires.
Right.
These were all workers banding together to draw attention to the fact that these are unsafe working conditions. And so most of people, if you were to say, I really work in an unsafe situation, but I don't want to speak out because it's just me and I might get fired.
Yeah.
But all of us getting together and forming a union and speaking out and saying, let's make more profits by making safer working conditions and respecting people on the job, that's what really unions do.
Yeah.
And I do believe that most people would agree with that.
So we're going to look a little bit at the future of labor, and you already mentioned AI, which is certainly disrupting the workforce across all industries. I think the trades are actually one of the safer industries right now when it comes to AI. And I want to talk a little bit about what's happening at the federal level in terms of government policies. OSHA is being cut back, as well as many other departments. Tariffs are impacting the workforce. Immigration is impacting the workforce. How do you see all of these things coming together to impact labor and unions? And you mentioned retaliation, which is also a thing in government right now.
Well, what I think about first is how even in this moment when there's so much fear that is being trying to be instilled in workers, they're still speaking out. And that really does give me hope, where we have Teamsters workers at Republic, sanitation workers speaking out. You still have folks at the Fenway at Unite Here, Local 26, still speaking out. This is an important, incredible, critical moment where workers are trying to remind people that we are still here. We are still going to speak out against some of the worst of what's happening in our communities. Healthcare is being cut. There's an attack on education. Lots of other Medicaid, Medicare. All of these things are not just workers that are being affected. It's all of our communities. And I think one story that I would love to share in terms of the federal workforce is that the folks that I've talked to that were getting laid off illegally, I might add, were not so, they were concerned about their livelihood, of course, but they were like, what about my cases of discrimination that I'm overseeing at the Department of Labor? What about the senior and that's being discriminated against, or folks with disabilities in housing? How am I going to do my job, and what's going to happen to them? That is like the first thing that some of our union members were thinking about as they were struggling to figure out whether they needed to apply for unemployment or all of these things. And that just breaks my heart, because these are folks who have committed themselves to public service and really care about what happens in our communities. And they are thinking not of themselves, but about what's going to happen to their people.
Chaton, how are you and other folks in your orbit thinking about things like AI?
So we support, any attack on, a union outside of the building trades, like we take that to heart as well, right? Because, we team up with Local 26 hotel workers and SEIU and 32BJ and, just because we're the building trades, like it's going to take all unions to come together, and we recognize that, right? So when you see these rallies and, Labor Day was an example, it's all workers coming together that, fighting for workers, and, attack on one is attack on all, and that's how we take that. And I think it's super powerful because, the union isn't just focused about their particular trade or union. It's we come together as all workers, and fighting for the same thing, respect and dignity. You mentioned safety. Safety's super crucial because the same way you showed up to work, like you need to go back home that same way, right? And when you cut corners on safety, you're just going to continue to cut workers. And I think, besides the money and everything, it's just like putting someone in harm's way for profit. That's just like, that speaks to the core of like why I get up and fight every day for the everyday working people that just want to show up and work and support their family and give back to their community, right? And oftentimes the people that come here and exploit workers, they're not even from here, so they're gonna profit, they're gonna leave, but that impact is still left on the worker. So it's up to us to all come together, united, and stand against anything that's coming against us to harm us.
You mentioned coming together this past weekend.
For sure.
Was the first ever, somehow, how is that possible, Labor Day parade in Boston. Why was this the first one? How is that possible?
Well, actually, honestly, it wasn't the first one. There were many Labor Day parades earlier in 1900s. So
first one in our lifetime.
In our lifetime. So we've seen so many. I mean, when I first came to Boston and going to the IBW 103 Union Hall, there are these lovely old pictures of these parades in the 1913, and I remember I'm like going in those halls and feeling so inspired inspired by that. And then also wanting to bring that solidarity and collective power and worker power back to Boston in a way that celebrates workers and changes this notion of that, you know, it is better in a union. No matter what people say, it really is better in a union. And you get a family, you get people who are going to stand by you, and you're going to get people who are going to make sure that you are taken care of. And one of those things on Labor Day was just having people celebrate. It was both festive and militant. You know, our theme was workers over billionaires. Really, the idea was that we need joy in this time when things are getting cut, when we're heading into a recession, when this administration is getting taken over by billionaires, and we need to also challenge that. And that's what we were doing. We were making sure that people was reminded about what the labor movement stands for, what we will continue to fight for, and that it's not just defensive. We are fighting forward for that world, that democracy we know is possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think this is a great time to bring that 100-year ago plus parade back. So thank you for doing that. Last question. What's your favorite food establishment in Dorchester?
Ooh,
and I
that's
will
nice.
open this up to Roxbury if I have to.
I thought I come to Dorchester often to eat.
Perfect.
So I like McKenna's for breakfast.
We eat at McKenna's. We eat at Sweet Life.
Sweet Life. And also I like bread too. I like bread.
Lower Mills?
Yep, exactly. Yep. Oh, Lower Mills, sorry.
There's so many great restaurants in Dorchester. And not just in Dorchester, I mean throughout Boston.
Yeah.
One of my faves is Cocoa Leaf. I'm going to put a plug in for those.
Where is that? I'm not familiar with that
It's
one.
right. It's in Fields Corner.
Okay.
And my kids used to love I still think they go there for the popcorn chicken, but I like all the different sauces. And they do have... They have such great boba tea and all those kinds of things.
Okay.
I love Cocoa Leaf, and I think we mentioned Sweet Life and McKenna's are kind of a mainstay. We go to breakfast there all the time. And I really just love the two. There are two Vietnamese restaurants on the corner that we always go to, Pho Le and.
You're better.
And they're both, we love the pho ho and pho le. So there's like incredible, rich diversity, and we just love to go to all the different restaurants.
We are always looking for good pho, so we'll check out Filet.
So good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys joining today and all the work that you're doing for the labor movement here in Boston, and keep on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Aaron.
for sure.
We really appreciate being on DotLife.
For sure. Thank you so much.